Hey everyone, welcome to My Final Play. I'm Brian. I'm here with former collegiate soccer player Pete Ruhl. Pete, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So we're going to get into the sport soccer,
Yep.
playing at the collegiate level. As far as the sport, at what point were you introduced to it?
When I was 4 years old, my family lived in Mifflinburg,
Mm-hmm.
and Mifflinburg, Lewisburg, Middleburg area. Pretty competitive soccer, even at younger ages like that.
Yeah.
After just a few years of learning to play the game and playing at the AYSO level, my dad and another dad who had a lot of soccer experience, they decided to start a U10 club soccer team,
Okay.
which I played on for I think about 2 years. Then we moved up to U12, and we're pretty competitive. We played against, again, Middleburg, Selinsgrove, Lewisburg, and then Williamsport. And Montoursville had some club teams that were playing in that North End Penn Club League. I think just through playing those teams, I learned the game, the speed, the technical skill, and just loved it. I loved going to games on Saturdays and then eventually on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait to get up. I was always up early on those days, excited and so forth. It didn't matter if it was AYSO or club. I just loved to play.
Right.
I had a great time and had a great network of teammates. And so there, just started. That's where it started for me.
Right.
Just being introduced, having the opportunity, and then I think my parents just knew that I loved it and just wanted to keep me going in some way,
Right.
shape, or form.
Quickly developed a passion for it then.
Exactly, yeah. And a couple of my buddies I remember from Mifflinburg and I went to a Bucknell day camp when we were probably only 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience
Right.
as well. So there we got introduced to playing against older kids, which was a lot more physical, a lot more faster, but we loved it even though we were getting beat up on at camp. It was fun. It was worth it. So that's were it all kind of started for me. So.
Right. And then with playing at the high school level, obviously you said that we were talking off camera. You moved then to an area that didn't have as rich of a soccer tradition.
True.
So what was that change like, and kind of how did that drive keep going?
At first, when we moved to the Muncie area, I quickly joined an AYSO team that at that point in that area that was the only option. So I joined an ASO team, and it was fine at first. We won a good amount of games and had a good time doing it. But after about the junior high years, 7th and 8th grade, and entered high school, I quickly realized that Muncie wasn't as competitive as some of the other teams in the area that I had experience playing against when I was in Mifflinburg at a younger age. And, I think that experience helped me a lot because it taught me how to be kind of resilient. Just because you aren't winning and you're getting frustrated losing some games, it doesn't mean you can't keep playing the game that you love. And there was one game in particular I remember. I can't even say it's not really embarrassing. It's just more frustrating. But I think I was in 8th grade and we were playing Hughesville, and it was just an ASO game. But the difference was they treated it like a real game. They were competitive. Where I think a lot of my buddies, at that time, didn't really take it seriously and were competitive, and we ended up losing like 8-0. I remember crying after the game because I was just so frustrated.
Right.
And it's you're junior high, you're emotional already to begin with. And
but the passion that you had for it and the work that you put in. Yeah.
So fortunately, my dad made some connections with the Loyal Sock area, and I got involved with Loyal Sock Soccer Club. At first, it was Mr. Broski, his son. Matt Broski was a phenomenal player at Loyal Sock, and I believe went to Shippensburg and played. But after that, I ended up getting in touch with Jim Ellis, who at the time I believe was a teacher in the Loyal Sock district and their varsity soccer coach. And he, I don't know what kind of conversation they had, but it worked out that I was able to join their club team, and that was basically from, I think, about 10th grade on, I played, with them. And I think at that point I really learned a lot of true passion for the game from a team standpoint. Everybody wanted to win, nothing but. Everybody was mad when we lost.
Right.
And you just learned a great deal psychologically from that experience. And I have to jump back briefly. There was one spring where I actually played for Balls Mills Soccer Club, and at that time it was the Pivorato brothers who were coaching, and I played for Matt Pivorato, who was a phenomenal player at like Cumming College and had held a bunch of records, and he was a great guy. And so he was another coach in addition to Jim Ellis that I learned a lot from, and a lot of true passion for the game, regardless of how well you were doing on the pitch. It was about how much you cared about playing,
right?
And that's what drove you.
So definitely some people in there that had an impact on the ability to kind of make it more than just a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you ended up then going to like Cumming College and playing there. What did that process look like for you then?
Well, even after all of that fun experience and learning and understanding that was much more than just a game to me,
mm-hmm.
I really didn't have any major dreams of playing college. I initially thought it would be fun
mm-hmm.
to have the opportunity,
right?
But I really didn't have people knocking down my door, and I was not an aggressive player off the field as far as reaching out, partly because I didn't know how to
mm-hmm.
or what the best way to go about it was. But my dad worked at like Cumming College, and he, asked the coach if he wouldn't mind at least just watching a game to see if I had anything that they needed.
Right.
And he came to one of the worst possible games he could have come watch me play, and it was against another local school, and we ended up losing 6-0 on our home field, and it was a team that we probably should have beaten pretty badly. Instead, the opposite happened.
Yeah.
I thought for sure I didn't have a shot at anything. But a couple days later, I remember getting a phone call, and he told me that, he actually saw me make a lot of plays that were smart plays, smart decisions. I made some runs that he could see were mature runs, if you will, smart runs.
Mm-hmm.
I made some intelligent passing decisions, and people just weren't on the other end to connect with. And he said that wasn't really your fault.
Right.
So he felt like my IQ was high enough that if we can get my conditioning up, my strength, that I could probably make an impact on the team.
Right.
So I took that as my only option, and put my full trust in Scott Kennel was his name,
yeah.
and decided to go to Lake Cumming, and that's kind of how I started there at Lake Cumming.
Right. So getting there, you're coming in as a freshman. You spent the 4 years there. What did some of that time look like, and what did that teach you?
Well, my freshman year, I went in with the mindset that I kind of knew already I was probably one of the weaker players in the team, especially when I saw the roster and where these guys were coming from. So I just figured I'm going to play as hard as I can until I can't run anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to learn as much as I can, intellectually speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then the physicality will come, the speed of the game will come.
Right.
And I found out that was the best decision I could have made.
Mm-hmm.
I never spoke up. I just showed up to practice and played hard.
Right.
And when I did make mistakes, it made it a lot easier on me because the older guys would pick my jersey up. They'd pick me up and they'd say, do this next time, or try this.
Right.
And I never mouthed off, and I learned a lot because of just watching,
mm-hmm.
and watching these older guys, these faster players, bigger players, smarter players. And I think that combined with that resiliency I learned when we moved
mm-hmm.
and had to kind of deal with some losing seasons, I think really allowed me to stay in it mentally. And fortunately for me, by the time we got to my junior year, I ended up starting in most of the games, the entire season, pretty much all the way through when we lost in the MAC championship game that year. And yeah, it was the fastest I'd ever been, the smartest player that I'd ever been in my life, and I was in the best shape.
Right.
Rarely needed subbed, and it felt great. I mean, it was to know that I went from not sure if I had a chance, just go for it, and actually doing it. It was awesome. And I will say I had a moment of weakness in my sophomore year. At the end of my sophomore year, I didn't play as much my sophomore year as I did my freshman year,
mm-hmm.
because we had a big freshman class my freshman year, and we were kind of all trying things out. And I remember walking to my dad's office and kind of telling him, I wasn't upset or anything,
mm-hmm.
but I was just like, I really don't know if I want to put forth, another 2 seasons doing this.
Right.
Because there's a lot of guys on this team, and they're great guys, but I just don't know if it's worth the time. And my dad's like, I don't want to tell you what to do, but I think you might regret that because you've put in so much time learning and growing that if you do it now, you might look back and wonder if you really could have done anything.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that I took his advice because that junior year made it worth it.
Right.
And then unfortunately, my senior year, summer training, I was even faster and stronger than I was at the end of that season.
Yeah.
Just playing pickup soccer, my knee, something happened, and it ended up being a cartilage issue,
mm-hmm.
Which, never really recovered, and I couldn't keep up. I never gained back the conditioning and strength I had compared to the guys who were training throughout the whole summer and the incoming freshmen. And so I ended up playing all but 20, or only playing 20 minutes my senior year, but it was still worth it being on the team, finishing that senior year out, being a part of that group. So
Man, such a pivotal moment though with being in your dad's office and that advice that he gave you. Just imagine what that road would have looked like if you didn't make that decision to stay.
Right.
So as far as, like you kind of alluded to, the final play was that last 20 minutes then of your senior year. But we'll go even back before that then, as far as the final play your junior year. What did that look like?
Well, my junior year, we were in a tough MAC conference. That was the year before, or 2 years before, like coming switched to the other side with Messiah and Elizabethtown.
Yeah.
But that year we were in with two really difficult teams, opponents, DeSales University out of the Allentown area and Drew University. And they're both still, I think, pretty solid programs. But that year we ended up losing to both teams in the regular season. And DeSales was a tough loss, and then Drew University was a 2-1, I think it was 2-1, overtime loss. And we actually had a shot on goal that was going in. It beat the keeper, trickling in, and the defender cleared it off the line. And that play that followed turned into a breakaway for an All-American forward who ended up scoring on our goalkeeper, who is coincidentally a Hall of Fame goalkeeper, like coming now. So it was a play with two phenomenal players, and they ended up beating us. So because of that loss, and they only had a tie in conference, we had to actually go to their place. I played real well that game. The team played real well, but it was just one of those things. We kind of had a so-so grass field, and they had a very fast-paced old AstroTurf style field. Yeah. And I think that played to their advantage. They ended up beating us 3-0, but I didn't walk out of that game disappointed. I walked out of the game eager and ready and hungry for the following season, because we had them at home that season, and we had opportunities in that game that we couldn't bury. Yeah. And in just 2 years before that, we went to their place in a regular season game and got outshot probably 20-something to 4, lost 4-0. I mean, it was just in 2 years we went from not competitive with them to almost beating them and playing them in the MAC final. So for me, I walked out of that final play of that season hungry, eager, ready to go, for another off season. And, then of course the injury occurred, but that's how I felt after that. Yeah.
So being that was your final play then, that you actually you're competitive in the sport of it, what would you say would be the emotions that you experienced that kind of concrete, or made that a concrete memory for you?
Well, my family made the trip to watch the game, so they were there to watch me play in a championship, something I had not had the opportunity to do ever, play in a championship game. And the fact that they were there, all of them, and watching, that meant a lot. The close relationships I had with my teammates and friends at the time, knowing that we had all worked a lot, because like I said, we had that big freshman class that pretty much everybody stayed on the team, no one left. And then a couple of the underclassmen we developed friendships with. I just remember just walking on their field ready to go and having it be a close game for most of the match until they put 2 late ones in. And I don't know. I think it was just the fact that it was a championship game. I'd never been in one of those, and that I was actually an integral part on the field. Right. I know that there's that mentality that everybody's as important as everybody else, and that's very true. Right. But the fact that I was on the field making decisions, making plays that led to some of the chances we had, makes me really feel like that game sticks in my mind. Even though it was a loss. Well, but
definitely a culmination of all the work that you put in, to get to that point. So that's really cool that it did leave an impact like it did. So, as far as the transition then, when you were done with the sport of soccer and done as an athlete, what did that look like for you? As far as if someone came up to you and you were on campus, and said, who are you? What do you do? What was your response then when you were playing, and what did that look like afterwards?
When I was playing, it was, if someone said, "Oh, I'm Pete," one of the first things I would say was like, I played for the soccer team. Right. Because there's a sense of pride there. Like, I think no matter what college team you play on, it's definitely a step up from high school. It doesn't matter if it's D1, 2, or 3, and there's that sense of pride that you have, knowing that you represent that team and knowing that you represent yourself and your family at whatever level it is. And I know a lot of guys in this area that have played at the D3 level, and some that have had the opportunity to even try higher. And I've coached a player or two that went from this area to play D2, at Bloomsburg. So it's like, it's fun. It's fun to know that they have that opportunity too. But I think that's how I would introduce myself and just kind of have this, just more pride than anything.
Yeah.
Just knowing that, hey, yeah, I mean, I stuck with it. And because I knew my story too. Like I knew I wasn't one of the best to start, and I was never the best player on the team, but I knew I was an integral part to what made us click that last season that I played. So, that's how I would have handled it.
Yeah.
Just to the point. I'm Pete. I play for the soccer team. It's nice to meet you.
Right.
When new kids, recruits would come on campus, or incoming freshmen, just very matter of fact. But
now, as far as that transition though, did that affect you in any way, or because was it something that was kind of the season's done, moving on, what that looked like?
No, actually, because I think the injury helped in that respect.
Yeah.
Because I knew that I was, but I didn't know I wasn't going to play anymore. I thought I still had a chance with the rehab and everything and physical therapy. But I think once the season started and the team was in a nice grind, in a groove, if you will, and I wasn't part of that, I was still part of the training ground. I was still a personality.
Right.
And some of the younger kids would come up and ask me questions like, hey, what's Coach think of this? Or what do you think Coach will think if we do try this?
Right.
So even though I wasn't playing, I think at that point, I slowly started transitioning into more of a coaching guide, mentor type of thing.
Right.
As opposed to a true player.
Yeah.
And I think in the long run, the injury kind of helped me there.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that transition to, it's over. So when we lost our final game, which was a semi-final playoff game against Ruhl on their field again, my senior year, my buddy and I were both on crutches, and the rest of the seniors, we were all upset and crying it was over. But I think it made it a little easier, that it's finally over, and I mean that it came quickly, type of thing, and now we got to move on. But I didn't look at any of that as a negative or I'm going to miss this terribly. Instead of looking at it like that, I looked at it as that was a phenomenal experience, and I immediately thought of I'm really glad I didn't quit. I'm really glad I didn't step down from it.
Right. Absolutely. So I guess the last question then would be, what do you think would be the number one thing that the sport of soccer has taught you throughout your life then?
I have to go back to that resiliency thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel that for me it was soccer taught me that. And I think for a lot of other people, other sports have taught them that as well, that you're not going to win every game, and there's going to be long periods of time possibly where you're not on a winning team, or you're not on a team where everybody cares as much as you do. But if you keep plugging away, you might have that opportunity to play in a situation where everybody cares just as much as you do.
Right.
If not, maybe even a little more on some days. And when you have that opportunity, those days that you're feeling better, you can bring the guys up that are feeling down.
Right.
And I feel like I carry that over into my teaching profession at school, because I see kids coming in the morning. In my 5th grade classroom, sometimes they're great, they're ready to roll, they're joking around, and then sometimes they come in like they might have had a pet that died, or they might have had a bad Little League game or something. And so I always take upon myself to make sure that they realize there's the tomorrow, there's another opportunity lying await, in front of you, to pick yourself back up and gain your ground back.
Absolutely.
And I think that knowing that I wasn't going to be a professional player, and knowing that was my final 4 years, that would be the biggest lesson I learned, that I took, that I hope to carry on and hopefully pass down to my kids at least, and hopefully some of the players that I coached, following my playing career.
Resiliency is definitely something that anybody can benefit throughout their life.
Oh, absolutely.
So mindset's definitely a big impact on every day.
Right.
So, well, I definitely appreciate that.
Sure.
And thanks for spending the time with me.
No problem. Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you do, please like and subscribe. And remember, whatever it is you do today, approach it with the mindset of, is this my final play? Thanks again.